All right, UFC 238 is coming up, man. And they're saying that the people's main event is Tony Ferguson and Cowboy Cerrone. Who am I to argue? That is an awesome fight between two guys that have been doing this for a long time. Let me give you the odds. Tony Ferguson minus 175 against Donald Cerrone comes back at about plus 145. This is the featured bout, the third one from the top. You got the main event, co-main event, and then the featured bout. So you got to tune into this one because this is going to have title implications. Start things off, Dan Tom. Who do you like in this fight?
This is a tough one. I kind of joked on the show before. You know, I've always begrudgingly picked against Cerrone. That the guy probably thinks I don't like him. I love Cerrone. I'm just kind of similar to Goes over here. I think we both share it. Donald Cerrone is one of the harder fighters to break down, whereas it's no secret, Tony Ferguson, one of my favorite fighters to break down. I feel like he is the uncrowned lightweight champion. He got to the belt before Khabib or before Poirier's interim belt, and I would argue he has a more impressive run than either of those two, which is splitting hairs. Great fighters. No shade on any of those other fighters, but not enough people are talking about Tony Ferguson. That said, 175 favorite. I agree, he should be the favorite. We could probably see the line a little wider, but Tony Ferguson, man, he's had a lot of personal issues. We're not sure where he's at. He seems like a really active guy, a guy that takes care of himself, but this is a kind of a limited camp, guys, and he's having to be jumped into this, really fast, whereas Donald Cerrone, you could argue he takes too many fights. He stays too active, but him and the majority of other fighters, arguably, the statistics will show, they do better when they're active. Is this the time when Cerrone, doesn't show up, though? He's kind of hard to predict. He's been showing up. Anybody that's been counting him out, he's been proving him wrong. Makes me nervous to pick against him here, which is why the line is close, guys. Cerrone could tax Ferguson with the head kick. We've seen Ferguson get hurt, just like he did in the Anthony Pettis fight. Another fight where he made a miraculous turnaround within 6 months, coming off that knee injury. But at the same time, I got to go with Tony Ferguson until I see different here. He plays a strange game. I'm sure Kevin Holland can talk about it here, where Tony Ferguson flows and he kind of presents stuff that's there. And yes, he can get hit, but I would argue that he really goes with the flow, moves with the punches, that he looks like he's more hurt than he actually is. And I think that fools a lot of people. And if you really know what you're looking at, you can kind of tell the difference. I think Tony Ferguson presents. He's a presenter. He's going to present you targets, but he's thinking he's playing the long game. If his durability holds up, guys, I think he can win this, because even though I do not want to pick against Donald Cerrone again, he's on a crazy run. But what is the one thing, even the best Donald Cerrone, what is the one thing that he has trouble dealing with? And that is pressure. That's what Tony Ferguson brings. I think we're going to see his jab, kind of like the RDA fight. We're going to see him fighting a lot from southpaw, and I think that pressure is going to pay dividends. So I'll take Ferguson, but in no way am I disrespecting Cerrone. I'm going to stay away from this fight.
All right, let's go to Kevin Holland, UFC middleweight. What you got, Big Mouth?
I'm going to totally disagree with you.
All right.
Look, Dad Cerrone.
Okay.
You don't put nothing past Dad Cerrone. Now Cerrone before was just cowboy. He was just wild. He was just living his life. He was just doing what he wanted to do, and he was just going out there fighting the fight. It wasn't so much a title run. It wasn't so much any of that. It was just cowboy being cowboy, getting paid to do what he loves to do. Now you got Cowboy out there, and he's looking to concrete that legacy. You know what I mean? He's going out there.
You're saying this is championship caliber Cerrone now?
Yeah, this is top tier Cowboy right here. This ain't even Cowboy. This is Donald Dad Cerrone.
You do realize that Tony Ferguson is, tell him the record, Dan Tom, in the UFC, 13-1, 14-1?
Yeah, the only loss is split decision by Michael Johnson. But the dad part you're queuing in, I'll let you finish here, because that's true. Something's been different since he's been a dad, right?
Ferguson never loses.
Yeah, but who has more wins in the UFC than Donald Cerrone? Who has more fights in the UFC than Donald Cerrone? The guy is a man. He's a veteran of the octagon, not just the cage, but the octagon. And make no mistake about it, that veteranness, that smarts, and ability to finally put it all together. It's kind of like Randy Couture. Randy Couture came back after a few years. He wasn't a worse fighter. He was a better fighter. You got Donald Cerrone coming back as a dad. Dude's unstoppable. I think he's gonna make that incredible run. He's that dream story that you think about when you think about MMA. He's the MMA dream. He's a guy who came out here, he really enjoys fighting, did it his whole life. Now he's about to come out here, he's gonna get his belt. Make no mistake about it, he's gonna get his belt. If he doesn't do it with Tony Ferguson, maybe he doesn't get it done. But he beats Tony Ferguson, he gets the belt, ain't nobody standing in the way.
All right, Goes, you go next.
I like that dad mode, and I can kind of share a little bit of that mode because I got dad bod, so I kind of know where he's coming from. I like the consistency with Donald Cerrone when he's fighting. I think that's when he's at his best, when he remains in camp and just keeps going.
He just fought Iaquinta, though, for 5 rounds.
And
that's
great.
Yeah, that was great. Dan brought up a lot of good points, and that's where is Tony Ferguson coming into this fight, and I really tried to keep that a part of this. And then I thought, you know what? I was kind of saying the same thing when he was going to fight Anthony Pettis. I was going to say, who comes back from an injury like that so quickly and just gets thrusted into a fight like that? And man, he proved me wrong. So I'm really going to put all that aside, and I'm just going to go 100% Donald Cerrone against 100% Tony Ferguson.
Okay.
I just feel like if you're Tony Ferguson, you can find people that fight like Donald Cerrone and prepare properly. But if you are Donald Cerrone, it's very hard to find somebody to match what Tony Ferguson brings into your camp and face that every day. I feel like everybody that faces Tony for like the first 5 minutes is like, what is going on? This is a little different. And sometimes they adapt, but most of the time they don't. I'm going to go with Tony Ferguson. I know you guys are going to laugh because I've never picked the Donald Cerrone fight properly, but that's my pick.
Oh, man.
Well, I'm going to go with Tony Ferguson as well. One thing that Dan said was one thing I was going to focus on a lot, and that is the pressure. You know, I'm going to go back about 7 years when he fought Nate Diaz. I didn't think Nate Diaz was going to be able to win that fight. Cerrone was kind of in a groove at that time.
Yeah.
But Nate Diaz just comes forward, and then he played a little bit of the mind game, you know, a little bit of the, what's up, what you got, you know what I mean?
Jab.
Not that Ferguson does too much of that, of the chirping, you know, but, I mean, when he's hitting you, it's almost like he's talking to you, and he's doing so many things at one time. It's just pressure that I've seen Cowboy have trouble with in the past. Now, Kevin brought something up that is so true. I mean, if you think about it, it is like Cowboy has changed as a fighter, the type of material he's made out of since he's become a dad. You know, could it be that little hug that the little man gave him before? I think it was the Perry fight or something.
Right.
It made him emotional, and maybe he has become championship caliber Cerrone, championship caliber Cowboy, whereas before it was just fighter Cowboy, and the next day he was on Lake Mead skimboarding or
Right.
or you know, going in some, swimming in some caves or something in Mexico. He seems to be focused now on the big prize. So that said, man, Ferguson's 13-1, 14-1 or something like that, just in the lightweight division. He's a stud. He's come back from so much. I'm also treating it as 100% Ferguson versus 100% Cerrone. It's going to be a great fight. I can't wait. I wish it was tomorrow. We still got to wait a whole week, but that was a fun breakdown, guys. Good job. Thank you, Kevin Holland, for
Going
stepping
against
in.
the grain.
All right, there you have it. There's the UFC 238 breakdown of the featured bout, Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Tony Ferguson. We're the MMA Junkie radio team, and that's UFC middleweight Kevin Holland.